My husband smirked when his mistress hit me in court. Then the judge opened a secret filing, and everything they'd hidden for years exploded. The slap sounded like somebody firing a starter pistol inside my skull. Not metaphorically, not poetically. I mean, my entire brain straight up blue-screened. 1 second I was standing there, 8 months pregnant, exhausted, swollen, surviving exclusively on spite and prenatal vitamins. And the next, my face was snapping sideways hard enough to make my earrings swing. The whole courtroom went dead. You know how people always say a room went silent? No, this was worse. This was the kind of silence where every person suddenly becomes aware they possess lungs. My cheek exploded with heat. My lips split against my teeth. And before I even processed the pain, before my brain caught up, my hand flew to my stomach. Not my face, not the blood. The baby, always the baby. Because apparently motherhood starts long before the kid arrives. The second something bad happens, your brain turns into a malfunctioning security system. Protect baby, protect baby, protect baby. Everything else can burn. I remember staring at the floor for half a second. Courtroom carpet, ugly carpet. Government building carpet always looks like somebody lost a fight with sadness and interior design at the same time. And then I heard it, a laugh, tiny, quiet. Almost invisible. Harrison, my husband. Technically still my husband. Legally my husband. Spiritually a landfill fire wearing a Rolex. That little laugh hit harder than the slap. Because Tiffany hitting me? Expected. Honestly, at that point, not even top 10 craziest things she'd done. But Harrison laughing, that tiny little breath of amusement, that was 6 years of marriage compressed into one sound. The sound of a man who genuinely believed consequences were something that happened to other people. I looked up. There he was. Expensive suit, perfect haircut. That same expression rich men get when they think the universe personally issued them. A VP pass. God, I used to think he looked sophisticated. Now he looked like a luxury car salesman who sold haunted vehicles. Funny how perspective works. The worst part? I wasn't even shocked anymore. 8 months ago maybe. 6 months ago definitely. But now I was just tired, deep tired. Ancient tired, the kind of tired that settles into your bones and starts paying rent. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal. The cheating isn't actually the most exhausting part. Everybody thinks it's the cheating. Wrong. It's the paperwork, the lies, the detective work, the realization that your entire life has secretly become a forensic accounting project. That's what drains your soul. I didn't discover Harrison was cheating and immediately become some warrior queen. No. I discovered Harrison was cheating and spent 3 weeks convincing myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe the hotel receipt was fake. Maybe Tiffany's name on financial documents was a clerical error. Maybe I was misunderstanding. Maybe. My God. The amount of stupidity grief can manufacture should qualify as renewable energy. I wanted explanations because the alternative was accepting that I'd married a man who planned things, not mistakes. Plans. There's a difference, a huge one. People make mistakes. People don't accidentally create shell corporations. People don't accidentally forge signatures. People don't accidentally transfer inheritances. That's not a mistake. That's a project. And Harrison loved projects. He loved strategy, loved planning, loved positioning. Every sentence out of his mouth sounded like it belonged in a business podcast nobody actually listens to. Synergy, optimization, leverage. God. If somebody says leverage during breakfast, run. Just run. Sprint. Don't look back. Take the toaster if necessary. Leave everything else. Because 6 years earlier, I thought Harrison Prescott was the answer. 41 years old, successful, respected, charitable, the kind of man people describe as impressive. I was 26. My mother was getting sick. The future felt enormous and terrifying. And then here comes Harrison with his confidence, an expensive watch, and carefully curated kindness. Looking back now, the kindness was weirdly professional. Like customer service? Like he'd studied human affection from a manual. I didn't notice. Of course I didn't notice. Nobody notices when they're standing inside it. You only see the trap after the cage closes. By the time my mother died, I was drowning. Completely drowning. Hospice. Funeral. Probate. Condolences. Paperwork. The endless paperwork. I swear grief should come with a personal assistant. Or a lawyer. Or a tranquilizer dart. People kept handing me documents. I kept signing them. Everyone said this needed signing. That needed signing. Everything needed signing. I barely remembered my own name half the time. Meanwhile, Harrison was everywhere. Helpful. Supportive. Reliable. God, he was reliable, always standing right beside me, making sure things got done, making sure forms were completed, making sure I didn't have to worry. Turns out whenever somebody insists you don't need to worry, that's exactly when you should start worrying. A lot. Maybe professionally, maybe full-time, maybe as a career. Because while I was grieving my mother, Harrison was apparently auditioning for Financial Supervillain of the Year, and I had no clue. None. Zero. I was busy trying to survive. Then came the pregnancy, which should have been happy. Should have. That's a dangerous word. Should have is where dreams go to die. I remember the first kick. I remember crying. I remember sitting on the couch holding my stomach, thinking maybe everything was finally okay. Maybe life was balancing itself out. Maybe all the terrible stuff was over. That thought aged beautifully, like milk left on asphalt. 14 months ago, I called a financial office and learned I wasn't authorized on accounts I thought belonged to me. I actually laughed, like a complete idiot. A genuine laugh, because it sounded so absurd. The representative sounded uncomfortable. I sounded confused. Then she mentioned Tiffany Graves, and suddenly my stomach dropped so fast. I thought gravity had personally singled me out. Tiffany Graves, the woman currently standing inside a courtroom after slapping a pregnant woman. Classy. Really adding to the resume there. What a pioneer. Some people become doctors. Some become astronauts. Tiffany apparently woke up every morning asking herself how she could become a cautionary tale, and somehow she kept exceeding expectations. Anyway, the second her name appeared on financial documents, everything started unraveling. Fast. like pulling one loose thread and accidentally dismantling an entire sweater. Except the sweater was my marriage, and underneath it was fraud, forgery, manipulation, and enough hidden secrets to fill several storage units. The scary part wasn't discovering the truth. The scary part was realizing how long the truth had existed without me. That's what keeps you awake, not the betrayal itself. The timeline, the sheer amount of time someone can smile at you while actively dismantling your life. That realization changes something inside you. It did for me. Standing there in that courtroom with blood in my mouth and my hand over my daughter, I suddenly understood something. The worst thing had already happened. Not the slap, not the divorce, not even the cheating. The worst thing had happened years ago. The moment I trusted the wrong person with access to everything. And weirdly, that realization made me less afraid. Not more, less. Because once somebody has already taken their best shot, what exactly is left? That was the moment Judge Thompson looked up, and the expression on his face made the entire room feel different, like weather changing, like pressure dropping before a storm. Like somewhere deep underground, something enormous had finally started moving. The courtroom doors slammed shut. Heavy, final, the kind of sound that doesn't just close a room, it closes options. And suddenly every ounce of smug energy Harrison brought into that courtroom started leaking out through invisible holes. Not all at once, slowly. Like watching a tire realize it's been punctured, Judge Thompson didn't raise his voice. That's what made it scary. People think authority is loud. It isn't. Real authority sounds like somebody who knows nobody in the room can stop what's about to happen. The bailiff moved first, then the clerks. Then everyone started shuffling. Papers with that weird nervous energy people get when they know they're accidentally witnessing the beginning of a disaster. And I was just standing there, face throbbing, back aching, baby treating my ribs like a demolition project. Honestly, the pregnancy alone should have qualified me for a medal. Nobody talks enough about the third trimester. Everybody posts cute baby bump photos. Nobody posts the reality. The reality is your organs are basically refugees. Nothing lives where it's supposed to anymore. Your bladder is under military occupation. Your spine files daily complaints. Sleep becomes folklore, and somehow you're expected to remain emotionally stable. Meanwhile, I'm standing in a courtroom bleeding from the mouth while carrying a human being who at that exact moment decided to start kicking. Fantastic timing. Love that for us. Judge Thompson looked down at a file. A thick file. Not normal thick. Not some paperwork thick. This thing looked like it had its own mortgage. I remember staring at it because I hadn't seen it before. Neither had Harrison. And judging by the way his eyebrows twitched, neither had his attorneys. Tiny movement. Most people would have missed it. I didn't. You spend years married to somebody like Harrison. You become fluent in microscopic facial expressions. Every narcissist thinks they're a genius. Most are just predictable. The judge started reading, not asking questions, not discussing, reading, which immediately felt bad for Harrison. Very bad. Because questions mean uncertainty. Reading means somebody already has answers. The first few pages seemed to hit his legal team before they hit him. That's when I noticed Gerald, lead attorney. Perfect hair, perfect tie, face of a man who probably billed by the minute and emotionally connected with absolutely nobody. His expression changed slightly. Tiny crack. Tiny fracture, but it was there. And suddenly I realized something Gerald hadn't known. Whatever was in that file, Gerald was discovering it in real time, which is never a comforting thing for an attorney. Nobody wants surprise evidence, least of all expensive lawyers. The judge kept reading dates, financial records, corporate filings, bank movements, everything precise, everything documented. No dramatic speeches, just facts, cold facts. And facts are brutal little creatures. They don't care about charisma. They don't care about status. They don't care about how many magazine covers you've appeared on. Facts walk into a room carrying a baseball bat. I watched Harrison straighten his jacket, then adjust his cuff, then touch his watch. Little self-soothing behaviors, the human equivalent of buffering. Because for the first time since I'd known him, he didn't seem to have a script. That was new. Harrison always had a script. Always. Every dinner. Every event. Every argument. Every apology. Especially apologies. God. The man apologized like he was negotiating a hostage exchange. Nothing genuine. Everything strategic. Watching him sit there without a prepared response felt surreal, like spotting a shark looking confused. The judge turned another page. Then another. Then another. And that's when the room shifted again. Not dramatically. Subtly. The way a crowd changes after realizing the favorite isn't winning anymore. The clerks stopped looking at me. They started looking at Harrison. Big difference. Huge difference. Because sympathy is one thing, suspicion is another. And suspicion had entered the chat. Hard. I caught Tiffany out of the corner of my eye. She looked irritated. Actually irritated. Not scared. Not embarrassed. Irritated. Which was honestly incredible. The confidence level on this woman deserved scientific study. Girl, you slapped a pregnant woman in front of a judge. You're not the victim of bad luck. You're the author of your own stupid little autobiography. She kept glancing toward Harrison, waiting for him to fix it. That was the funny part. Everybody expected Harrison to fix things, including Harrison, especially Harrison. The problem was that some situations can't be managed. You can't charm forensic evidence. You can't gaslight a spreadsheet. You can't manipulate timestamps. Numbers are stubborn. They don't care how expensive your suit is. The judge finally stopped reading. Silence. Again. Different silence this time. Not shock. Wait. Pure wait. The kind that settles over everybody at once. Then he looked directly at Harrison. And for the first time all morning, Harrison looked away first. I almost missed it. Almost. But I saw it. A fraction of a second. Eyes dropping. Just briefly. The smallest surrender. And somehow that tiny movement hit harder than anything else. Because this was a man who had spent 6 years making everyone else look down. Me. Employees. Assistants, contractors, everyone. Now he couldn't maintain eye contact with the judge reading his own paper trail back to him. Poetry. Absolutely beautiful. 10 out of 10. Would recommend. My knees started shaking. Not from fear. Adrenaline crash. Huge difference. The body doesn't understand victory. Nobody tells you that. The body understands danger. Once danger starts fading, your nervous system basically sends an angry email. I felt exhausted. Completely wrecked. Like somebody had drained all the batteries out of me. I sat down because standing suddenly felt optional. My hands stayed on my stomach. The baby moved again. Small roll. Small reminder. Still here. Still okay. And weirdly, that mattered more than anything happening around me. Not the lawyers. Not the evidence. Not Harrison, just that tiny movement. Everything else became background noise for a second. Then the courtroom doors opened. Every head turned, and in walked Simon. Finally, tie crooked, hair a mess, looking like he'd been personally attacked by the concept of a morning. I nearly laughed. Not because it was funny, because relief is weird. Relief and panic are cousins. Sometimes they wear each other's clothes. He crossed the room carrying a thick folder, thicker than the one already on the bench, which immediately made me think, oh, somebody's day is about to get substantially worse. And judging by Harrison's expression, he thought exactly the same thing. For the first time all morning, genuine fear appeared. Not irritation, not annoyance, fear. Real fear? The kind that slips through before somebody can hide it. And suddenly I understood. The hearing wasn't the main event. Everything so far? Just the opening act. The actual collapse hadn't even started yet, and Harrison finally knew it. Simon dropped into the chair beside me like a man who'd fought traffic, bureaucracy, and possibly a bear on the way over. No dramatic entrance, no movie moment, just exhausted determination. Honestly, way more intimidating. People underestimate tired professionals. Huge mistake. Arrested lawyer is dangerous. A sleep-deprived lawyer carrying evidence is a natural disaster. He set the folder on the table, didn't rush, didn't grandstand, didn't look at Harrison, which somehow made Harrison look at him even harder. The judge nodded once. That's it. One nod. Apparently lawyer telepathy is real, because suddenly documents started moving. Folders opened, pages exchanged, copies distributed. The legal equivalent of loading ammunition. And I had absolutely no idea what was inside, which was driving me insane. I hate surprises. I especially hate surprises involving my own life. I've always been that person who reads spoilers. Judge me. I don't care. Life provides enough plot twists. I don't need entertainment doing it too. The judge flipped through the new filing, page after page, then another page, then another. At one point his eyebrows lifted slightly, very slightly, which felt significant because the man had the emotional range of Mount Rushmore. Across the room, Gerald was reading his copy, and suddenly all the color left his face. Gone. Evaporated. Like somebody hit delete. Interesting. Very interesting. My brain immediately started generating theories. Witness? Hidden account? Tax fraud? Secret second family. Honestly, with Harrison, the possibilities were endless. Like a subscription box nobody wanted. Each month, a fresh delivery of disappointment. The judge finally stopped turning pages. He looked directly at Harrison, and what happened next was fascinating. Because Harrison didn't look angry, he looked confused. Not confused by the evidence. Confused by the existence of consequences. Different thing. Very different thing. It's hard to explain unless you've known someone like him. Some people genuinely believe systems exist for them. Rules are decorative. Policies are suggestions. Boundaries are obstacles for lesser people. Then one day reality sends an invoice, and they're stunned, absolutely stunned. The judge began discussing communications, not financial records, not property, communications. Immediately my stomach dropped, because communications meant messages. Messages meant receipts. Receipts meant stupidity preserved forever. Technology really is humanity's greatest enemy. People document their own crimes now, voluntarily. It's incredible. The judge referenced digital recovery reports, cloud archives, deleted material, backup data, and suddenly I remembered an old phone. An old phone I'd forgotten existed. Apparently Simon hadn't. God bless obsessive attorneys. Seriously, everybody needs one, like a dentist, or health insurance, or emotional support snacks. The recovered records painted a timeline, not of the affair. That wasn't the important part anymore. The affair was ancient history. Boring. Expected. No, this timeline focused on logistics, planning, coordination, future actions, specific future actions. And that's when I felt something cold move through me. The lock change. I hadn't known about that. Not until the judge mentioned it. A scheduled lock replacement. A property access update. A work order. A date. My prenatal appointment date. My prenatal appointment. I sat there trying to process it. Trying. Failing. Trying again. The plan had been simple. While I was at a medical appointment, heavily pregnant and alone, access to the house would have been changed. No warning, no discussion, no chance to prepare. Just arrive home and discover you no longer live there. I physically felt my brain reject the information, like a computer refusing a corrupted file. Because who does that? Seriously, who sits down and designs that? What kind of person looks at a pregnant woman and thinks, you know what would improve this situation? Surprise homelessness. Absolutely psychotic. Corporate psychotic. The worst kind. The kind with spreadsheets. I stared at the table. My hands had gone cold, not shaking. Cold. Different sensation. Like my body was quietly recalculating everything. Every memory. Every interaction. Every excuse. Because suddenly old moments started rearranging themselves. The weird questions. The request for schedules. The interest in appointment times. The insistence on calendars. I thought he was being organized. Turns out he was building a timetable. That's a rough realization. Would not recommend. 0 stars. Tiffany finally seemed to understand things were bad. Really bad. You could see it happening. The confidence draining out in stages. First confusion, then concern. Then that specific expression people get when they realize they accidentally attached themselves to somebody else's criminal investigation. Whoops. Awkward. Imagine blowing up your entire reputation for a man currently being discussed like a case study. Couldn't be me. Across the room, Harrison kept trying to write notes. I noticed because he stopped halfway through multiple sentences. Starting, stopping, crossing things out, starting again. For the first time ever, he looked uncertain. Not defeated. Not yet. Just lost. Like he'd walked into the wrong meeting. The judge continued. Then came the part nobody expected. Not even me. A cooperating witness. The phrase landed in the room like a dropped weight. Cooperating witness? Everybody froze. Even the attorneys. Even the clerks. Everybody. Because that phrase changes things. A document can be challenged. An interpretation can be argued. A witness? Different game, especially an insider. And judging from Harrison's reaction, he knew exactly who it was before anyone said a name. His shoulders tightened. Tiny movement, but enough. Then the judge referenced employment history, financial oversight, estate administration, retirement. And suddenly I knew too. Dennis. Sweet Lord. Dennis. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. For years, I'd barely thought about him. Just another financial manager? Another guy in a tie? Another professional moving paperwork around. Meanwhile, apparently Dennis had been quietly sitting on enough evidence to detonate Harrison's entire future. What a plot twist. The accountant. The accountant was the final boss. Incredible. Never underestimate boring people. Boring people know everything. They see everything. They archive everything, especially accountants. Those people treat documentation like a religion. The affidavit was extensive, painfully extensive, detailed enough to make everyone's life miserable. Dates, instructions, approvals, records, attachments, and one particular item that seemed to hit Harrison harder than anything else. An email. Oh, forgotten. Preserved. The kind of email written by somebody who thinks they'll never have to read it again. Big mistake. Huge. Because nothing exposes arrogance faster than your own words returning years later. The judge read part of it silently, then looked up, and I watched Harrison's face. Not fear this time. Recognition. Instant recognition. He remembered exactly what he'd written, and he knew everybody else was about to see it too. That's when it happened. The first crack. The real crack. Not in the case. In him. His hands started trembling. Small. Barely noticeable. But I noticed because those hands had always been steady. Always controlled. Always precise. And now they weren't. For 6 years, I'd watched Harrison control rooms. Control conversations. Control outcomes. Now he couldn't control his own hands. The weird thing, I didn't feel victorious. I expected victory. Movies promise victory, triumph, vindication, cue inspirational music. Actual life is stranger. What I felt was distance. Like I was standing on a hill watching a building collapse miles away. Important building, terrible building, but still distant. Because somewhere during all of this, I'd stopped fighting for the marriage. Stopped fighting for fairness. Stopped fighting for explanations. I was fighting for something much simpler. The future. Mine. My daughter's. Nothing else. And as Harrison sat there staring at evidence written in his own words, years earlier, I realized something. The courtroom wasn't deciding whether I was telling the truth anymore. That question was already over. Now it was deciding how expensive his lies were about to become. And judging by the expressions around the room, the bill was going to be enormous. The room never recovered after the affidavit. You could feel it. Not emotionally. Structurally. Like the entire hearing had been heading one direction all morning, and suddenly, somebody grabbed the steering wheel. Dennis hadn't just handed over records. He'd handed over a map. Every transfer. Every instruction. Every shortcut Harrison thought had disappeared. The email was the worst part. Not because it was dramatic. Because it was casual. Cold. The kind of sentence written by somebody completely certain nobody else would ever read it. The judge finished reviewing the final pages. Then everything started happening fast. Way faster than I expected. Orders. Rulings. Signatures. Directives. One after another. No pauses. No theatrical speeches. Just legal machinery finally turning. The marital home. Protected. The accounts. Frozen. Medical coverage? Restored immediately. Property claims? Preserved pending investigation. Every time Harrison's team pushed back, they got nowhere. At one point, Gerald stopped arguing entirely. Honestly, smart move. Even he looked like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. Tiffany looked sick. Not courtroom nervous. Airport security with something illegal in your bag nervous. She kept staring at the floor. Good. The floor hadn't assaulted anybody. Safer choice. The hearing was almost over when Harrison made his final mistake. Because apparently he collected mistakes like Pokemon. Gotta catch 'em all. He leaned toward me. Not dramatically. Just enough. Just close enough. And under his breath, he said something that was clearly meant for me alone. A threat. Short. Stupid. Arrogant. The kind of thing a man says when he's spent his whole life believing rules are optional. Unfortunately for him, the courtroom microphone picked it up. Every word. I actually saw the moment realization hit him. Tiny delay. Then regret. Then panic. The judge's face hardened. Not angry. Worse. Done. Completely done. The response was immediate. Additional restrictions. Additional warnings. Additional documentation. Everything officially entered into the record. Harrison sat back in his chair. Silent. For once. Actually silent. The hearing ended maybe 10 minutes later. The gavel came down. People stood. Papers moved. Chairs scraped. Normal sounds. Weirdly normal. Like the room was trying to pretend the last few hours hadn't happened. I stood carefully. 34 weeks pregnant and operating entirely on caffeine, adrenaline, and pure stubbornness. My back hurt. My feet hurt. My face hurt. Everything hurt. Simon gathered the files. I gathered myself. Then I looked across the room one last time. Harrison was reading something Gerald had handed him. Another document, freshly delivered. His eyes moved down the page, then stopped. The color disappeared from his face. Completely. Whatever was in there was bad. Very bad. I never found out what exact sentence he was reading. Didn't care. Didn't ask. Didn't want to know. For the first time in years, his problems weren't mine. That felt amazing. Absolutely incredible. Highly recommend. He looked up, straight at me, and there it was. Fear. Real fear? Not fear of embarrassment. Not fear of losing money. Fear. The genuine article. Like he was finally seeing the future and didn't like what it looked like. Meanwhile, I was just tired. So unbelievably tired. The anger was gone. The panic was gone. Even the satisfaction was smaller than I'd imagined. Mostly I just wanted lunch, and a nap, and maybe a new spine. Pregnancy really lowers your standards. I adjusted my grandmother's pearl earrings, picked up my folder, turned around, and walked toward the exit. No dramatic final stare. No movie speech. No last-minute comeback. Just walking. One step, then another, then another. The courthouse doors opened. Sunlight hit my face. Warm. Bright. Real. For the first time all day, I took a full breath. My daughter shifted inside my stomach. A tiny movement. Tiny reminder. Forward. That's it. Just forward. Behind me, Harrison Prescott was still trapped inside the mess he'd built. Ahead of me was a parking lot, an overdue nap, and a baby who'd be arriving soon whether the world was ready or not. Honestly, that sounded a lot better, so I kept walking, and I never looked back.